Hey, this is Anatoly. I am a co-founder of the Solana protocol, and I'm happy to be here at REIMAGINE.
Hey, this is Galen. I'm the CTO at MouseBelt, and I'm happy to be at ReImagine.
Hello and welcome to ReImagine 2021. This is our 8th conference in a monthly series of events, bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in the space. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all the above. That's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today from the MouseBelt team, where we focus on early stage investments to our accelerator, providing development support to a number of growing projects, as well as education within the MouseBelt University program. Our main objective and goals are increasing adoption, use cases, and real-world applications. Pretty straightforward. We seek, ReImagine seeks to educate our audience on blockchain by helping them understand crypto's real impact. So all of you tuning in, thank you for joining us. We have an exciting interview for you today. Anatoly Yakovenko, co-founder of Solana. How are you doing today, Anatoly?
Great to be here.
Awesome. So as I mentioned kind of before this call, Solana was one of my first research reports for our VC arm. And, this was like early 2018 and we were looking to get in. I gave it a C plus.
C's get degrees, man.
Yeah. This is true. I gave it a C plus just at that time, but thank God when I went back, I went back to the report a couple months ago when I did an interview with Kyle, and I was like, please let me put down an A, right? So anyways, you guys checked all the boxes, you guys hit all the milestones and roadmaps, and here we are today. I'm based in San Francisco, so I've been to the meetups here and kind of heard you, I've seen the process and the journey, so very fortunate to have you join us today. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool. Galen, how you doing today, man? Thanks for taking time out of your day as well to join us.
Oh, pretty good. Happy to be here.
Cool. So Galen's our CTO, and he'll be co-hosting with me, and we'll have some fun interviewing Anatoly. So let's go ahead and kick this off, man. So it's interesting. You have a pretty solid background in distributed systems and extensive resume. And people can find that on YouTube, anywhere. Anatoly's done a lot of interviews, so I won't go down that path. But what was the aha moment, right, to leave your employer into blockchain, right? There's probably people right now that are, not going from scratch, from a non-technical to into blockchain, typically as like starting a protocol. But what was your aha moment? And there's people that might be hesitant. That are qualified, but just hesitant to do this switch, leave their employer, their benefits, blah blah blah. Yeah, to take us through that little moment in time.
So I would say engineers are pretty blessed to have that option because there's just so much demand for smart technical folks that going to a startup is not that big of a risk because you're still coding, you're still building stuff. So like if you fail in like 6 months, like literally my employer at the time, Dropbox, said, people do this all the time. So if it doesn't work out in 6 months, we'll just take you back. No questions asked.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like, this doesn't come back. This doesn't work out. Is it cool if I, reapply?
Yeah.
I have to reapply.
Yeah. They're like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll literally give you your offer back, like, and reinstate you like full benefits. So like as an engineer, especially in like California, there's just so much demand for you that it's fairly easy. And I've always been like a tinker. I had my friends and I had a startup in college. This was like 99 to 2003 that failed miserably. I would like come home from Qualcomm and like after surfing I'd go code. And again, like I had like 1,000 ideas that failed over 12 years. The aha moment for this one was like I had 2 coffees and a beer, as the legend goes, and I was like
nice.
up till 4 a.m. Like I couldn't sleep because I was ruminating on this idea about using a technique similar to proof of work, like that like cryptographic puzzle that somebody solves, but instead of proving energy or electricity, you prove the passage of time. And it all kind of just clicked in my head at that 4 a.m. moment. And I had this realization that you can use a similar puzzle, but you can actually prove that time elapsed somewhere else and that there was a passage of time between 2 events. And why that any of that was important was because of my decade at Qualcomm. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a company that builds technologies for mobile phones, wireless networks. Like, I didn't work on the wireless protocol part, but it was just through osmosis over a decade. It kind of sunk into me. And the key component to wireless radio optimization is that, the obvious thing, two towers transmit at the same time or the same frequency get noise. So the first thing that people did in radio was they gave each tower a clock and they would alternate by time. So they would never, interfere with each other and information can pass through. Same problem in blockchain. Two block producers produce a block at the same time, you get a fork. So that's the network is noisy because nobody knows what to do next. So if you can alternate them by time, by some discrete way to actually prove that time, that there's a source of time in the network, then they eliminates the source of forks and information can pass through. The network runs at peak capacity and you kind of have this, like, you've solved scalability, so to speak. So that was really what kickstarted it. Took some time for me to convince my wife, who's an engineer, to even listen to me. And then, like, she's like, oh wait, this might work.
Nice.
That was it.
No, that's cool. A little support there, internal support. But I don't know if I've met a pair yet, engineering pair like that. Like that's kind of cool. What did you, and there's a lot in there to unpack, but what did you learn from like those 10, 12, the X amount of years in terms of failing, right? Like, I think some people think these unicorns are just born or, they just pop up but no, like it takes time, experience, opportunity, a little bit of luck, technology to kind of catch up, right? In some capacity yeah.
Like in being an engineer, after a while, like, you realize in your career that you're only working on stuff that's broken. Like you're only working on something that's busted. So you kind of like have limited time to celebrate in the successes. So you got to get used to failure, right? You like constantly fail until it works. Yeah. And then your manager's like, great, here's like another pile of broken shit. go work on that.
As you can see from Galen's pale face, he hasn't left his room.
Yeah,
just coding. This is all he does, like till 4 a.m. He's like, I just went to bed at 11. I was like, oh, 11 last night. It's early. He's like, no, like 11 in the afternoon. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you get like, I used to have like, sometimes I'd have dreams when I have a debugger that I'm just constantly stepping through trying to catch a bug, like that like fever state in your mind, like you've been staring at the same problem for like 2 weeks, right? Like it's just not getting why it's not working. And that experience, I don't know, that some people like it, some people don't. Like I was just like really into that, like unraveling these knots of like something that's busted and getting to that like bug that's just really weird and hard to catch. So nice. that was my life.
Nice. Galen, feel free to chime in whenever. And we'll touch on Solana, like, shortly in a few minutes. But so you kind of come to this conclusion, like, let's go ahead and do this. And then how do you form your team? Because I think these are pretty important aspects too, along with this idea just didn't pop up. Now, talent, right? Like bringing on talent, whether that's a friend, an internal friend, an acquaintance that you remembered. Like, how did Solana form in terms of the co-founders or the employees?
Yeah, we're, like, again, these were pretty close personal friends of mine. What really tied us was that, like, we're into the sport called underwater hockey, and this is something that like we just played for fun.
I read that and I wasn't sure if you were joking. Like I didn't even look it up. I was like, am I an idiot, or like, is this real? Is he just joking? Yeah, I guess it's real.
So that's pretty rare, right? And within that community, you like meet other people that are like super into like deep technical compiler GPU optimizations, and like there's two weird things. You just become friends, right? Like that intersection is like good enough to like make deep friendships. And when I had this idea, those were like the folks that I called. I wasn't at Qualcomm anymore, but this is where we're like we were all at Qualcomm at the like for over a decade. And I was like, hey, I think this thing might work. It's a cool idea. Crypto's like interesting. I don't know if anyone's going to use crypto, but it seems like an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Let's go build it. And that was kind of like what formed the team is those like decade-long relationships, and it helps working with friends at a startup because you kind of get into you know, things like it's exciting to like get an investor to believe you and to give you like commit like $50,000. You're like, holy shit, I can't believe somebody would actually give me that much money. I could like quit my job and like that's enough to like pay for food, or let's go do this.
We're gonna IPO next.
Right. But then like you get through that like initial thing and then it's a grind. It's a 2-year long grind and you just got to keep pushing.
It's like Silicon Valley. Have you seen Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Everybody has, right?
Yeah.
But like they're so on point, and we've seen it on everybody in tech in the startup world, which is kind of why we got into startups. Like as an incubator was like driving value, like adding value. We would invest in kind resources, so like we would give them engineers and developers. Like that was our strategic value to these teams, that instead of turning around and hiring, like we'll just give them our team and like ramp them up and get them to the next level and build cool shit quicker, faster, and continue on. I think I remember Galen's first check. I was at the bank like 10 years ago. Like I was a private banker and these guys were like, dude, our first check, or like for some project, it was like 25K. I was like, damn, you're rich. Like, here we go. We can fund the account, You're
going to make it.
I've been reversing fees for months out of zero balance. I'm like, we're good. All right, we're good. I told my manager they're the next unicorn coming out. But no, that's cool. Yeah. Like, forming your team and like having the same kind of interest and hitting, it is a grind and like it is kind of scary and like you go down this path.
Yeah. So in terms of that, so you started it was 2017, correct?
Yeah, right at the end of 2017 is I quit my job, like went full time and started writing the white paper, and like I had the high level idea, and then like I really needed to actually like do everything. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I gotta like build a design, write a white paper, like that's passable, go like talk to a bunch of investors, raise funding, get like a team together. we didn't write a single line of code until February, like 2018.
Oh, wow. So you went right through the crypto sort of boom and drop off, and then got heads down working on it.
Yeah.
That was a prime point though. That's when I started researching more because projects were coming out, and I think you guys had like 10 followers in your Telegram. I'm like, let's just hold off. And they got something here,
Yeah.
But those are some of the metrics that we had to look at that point. Like, was there a community? And we'll get into community shortly, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. So what's your vision like on blockchain, crypto blockchain? Like, you're building something, and we'll get into that. But like, what are we building, and what for? Like, how do you see it?
So I think the craziest thing about blockchain, I think, isn't the layer one technologies. I think that stuff is less important. But I think the really cool thing about it is, imagine like a world where every human has a way to cryptographically sign messages, and they kind of understand what they're doing to the level that we understand how to click a link on a website. Like we get to that level and people have this like strong understanding of like, okay, if I sign this thing, it really comes from me.
Yeah.
And I can see proof that like 100 million people sign this thing, right? Like we will, I think, see like a world that's really super connected. We'll go away from this like social graph where I know you and you know somebody else through intermediary links, to where I have like full guarantees that everybody has agreed on this thing. Like we are all super connected, like the links kind of disappear. And like finance seems like the obvious thing here, like the obvious kind of use cases, because anonymously people can coordinate funds into programs and then like do stuff with them, and we all have like, we can all see that that's correct, and majority of the people agreed on something, and that program took action financially. And that stuff I think is like the boring thing. I think the really exciting things are like, what is the Facebook of this going to look like, right? Like in 1996, somebody's telling you sharing pictures of cats and like between your family is going to be worth $1 trillion. You're like, get out of here, right? Like that's just insane.
Going back to your startup analogy, like even in hindsight, people are like, oh yeah, Facebook, Ubers, Airbnbs. Like if you told somebody, hey, rent out your pad to like some strangers for like a few $100, you'd be like, how close are they? Like, who are they? You'd be like, oh, hell no, So yeah, like you're right. Like, we don't know what it's going to bring. We can't foresee that quite yet. Maybe we have, an idea, some concepts, but yeah, you're totally right. Like it's interesting, mysterious.
Yeah, I think like some stuff that's exciting outside of DeFi, like digital tokens, like NFTs. Like I played Ultima Online. This was like the first the first morph, like massive online game with a UI. Before they were like Moog, they were text based, and this was like the first one. And like as soon as like you had enough people using this thing, even if it was centralized, like these dark economies that were not supported by the game were formed because people wanted to buy shiny trinkets in the game.
Yeah.
Those were NFTs. Those were like first NFTs. Like why did I spend like 10, like why did I send somebody like a banker's check? Actually went to the bank, got like a cashier's check because nobody trusted like each other, right?
Yeah.
Send this thing over email to then get like a digital item in the game. It's just bizarre. Like, and I did it, right? Like I went through that pain.
Dude, somebody was gonna send me a check, and I'm like, no, like we're in crypto. Like there's a way better ways to like handle this. At this point, there's way better ways. And this is an NFT themed event and conference. We got people talking about kind of their ideas here. And before we kind of get into that, like, so what's your view talking about like tokens and kind of like, DeFi, maybe more financial, like Bitcoin, like what is Bitcoin to you? What does it mean? Like financial freedom, just kind of self-sovereign bank? Like how do you view Bitcoin holistically?
I think like the proof of work thing gives us this really interesting claim on store of value because the number of zeros in those hashes, it's really hard to compute that. There's a lot of electricity that goes into it. It's almost like somebody's carving out like Mount Rushmore in math, right? Like this is like a mathematical Mount Rushmore. We're gonna like build this thing. And like owning a piece of it intrinsically is really cool and like interesting. I think there's like proof of work, that Nakamoto consensus around it is like a beautiful piece of work. And I don't know if anything can replace that. So Bitcoin has like its claim to hash power, which is really cool. I think there's some really interesting phenomenon on Ethereum with miner extractive value. I don't know if folks are following like flashbots, and it's going to be wild if the hash power on Ethereum, like the cost to attack Ethereum in terms of like POW attack vectors, will become higher than Bitcoin. There might be something really interesting that happens in like the next year or two. So like I'm pretty excited about that part of it. With NFTs and things like that, I think it's a very human thing for us to want to do art. Like I think art is just a super, like it's just awesome, right? Like we had like digital artists that have started building some of like animations for us, and these are like cool renderings of like the ocean with like lights and stuff like that. It gives like a really atmospheric feeling that like I'm watching something that came out of somebody else's imagination. I think there's like a true artwork element there, and crypto, like this cryptography thing where you and I can prove our identities and prove ownership and like coordinate like moving this stuff around. It's just like Ultima Online. It's like we're just passing digital trinkets around, and they're cool, and like I want them. Like I don't know why.
Well, there's this conference, we've been chatting with quite a few people on some of these ideas, and like what are some of the challenges, I guess, to just even stay on NFTs? Like the challenges and barriers are in terms of, is it psychological? Is it the demand, the supply side, or obviously we're just like, we're going through a boom now. And what I mean by that is like generational, right? Like there's people that are like, I don't want to own something that's digital. Like I don't have it. I don't feel it. You have that kind of, thought process and opinions. And then you have kind of like, you know, these things going for like 70 million bucks and like, you know, other kind of instruments even for artists to leverage in terms of like residual income and like in perpetuity and getting, you know, that. So like what are some of the challenges and barriers like in the NFT spot?
It's just all like, it's just going to take a long time for people to like, people to get it. Like, you know, what was it? Bill Clinton was the first president to send an email, and he sent like 2 during his presidency, right? And then like it took, I think, till like, right, like till post Obama era, like where people started tweeting, right, and like actually like using the internet like at that level. So that's like adoption, right? Like when the president uses your, like buys an NFT or has an NFT, and like it's gonna take 20 years for us to get there, simply because like people like they're slow, right? They're slow at like understanding new phenomena and new technologies, and it just takes them a while. And you know, like we get to be kind of at the forefront of this and see this happening and like kind of build this new, you know, new social network, new way to communicate.
It kind of takes us back to like this peer-to-peer thing, kind of like at the root of crypto, blockchain, like how we operate in communities, and like this peer-to-peer transfer of value. Not only that, this peer-to-peer like social engagement. So like there used to be like, you know, mass marketing, right? And now it's like individual marketing, and like no marketers even involved, you know, no agencies involved. It's like, you know, let me share with you like Instagram, right? And Facebook like live, and being able to see people's lives, you know, in kind of the static or even in the live feed. And now we're like offering unique NFTs. Obviously, that's what NFT is, unique, but sharing that to kind of engage even more. What about like technology speaking, like gas fees with NFTs, generating them? Like, what is like? How do we get past
like all
that?
that stuff will be solved. It's already solved. It's just not like the users haven't moved yet. And some have, right? Like you see this, like, you know, like we have like a particular approach and like a philosophy to why we're designing the system. Like the core thing that we're focusing on is censorship resistance. Is that like at the network level, can we, you know, if you look at like get rid of store of value, get rid of proof of work, what are you left with? Is censorship resistance. That's the only interesting thing about the technology we're building versus
we just had some calls today about that with a couple protocols. Like, hey, like, you know, that's you're right.
So at the physical level, that literally means what is the minimum set of independent parties that can halt the network, that can reorder messages, that can mess with the information on there. And maximizing the set just requires each of the nodes to process more information, deal with more signatures, do more cryptography, and that just takes hardware. There's like no way around it. You just need to like increase the scale of like the amount of throughput these things do. So like we're kind of taking like the Qualcomm approach, like build hardware that like, you know, optimize for the hardware, like make this thing use silicon because there's 10 million people working on 3 nanometer stuff at the SMC, right? That's coming out 2 years from now, and everything's going to be twice as fast and twice as more performant. So if we can like stand on the shoulders of those giants, we've kind of solved the problem. So that's been our approach. And for us, that like censorship resistance is really important because I think like, you know, what is like the key thing that these systems can provide, right? Like what is censorship resistance? It's the ability for us to guarantee that any 2 users in this network that are using it, nobody's going to censor them, right? That information will pass through between any of them. And that's literally what markets are supposed to do. Like NYSE, CME, like all the regulation around like all those exchanges is designed to make sure that if I'm connected to that exchange, that nobody can screw me, right? Like I have a fair connection, it's open, it's guaranteed, that the exchange isn't going to mess with my data. Well, if we physically implement this, right? If we like build enough hardware, like make this thing just hardware, software, then we've effectively implemented price discovery, right? Global, open, free price discovery engine for whatever marketplaces people want to run. So like that kind of like trading DeFi stuff, I think is
Yeah.
almost like the search engine use case of the internet in the
Oh, wow.
90s. Yeah, everyone's connecting to the world. There's a big pile of information. We need to search it. Kind of obvious that we need a search engine. Well, like everything's becoming a token, right? Like my tweets are tokens. We need
Yeah.
a way to do price discovery. Here's like a big, powerful price discovery engine that's open to anybody.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Galen?
Oh yeah, no, that's a very cool concept. I mean, so what you compared it to NYSE and all of these other electronic exchanges as well, and it seems that these things are clearing a lot more orders. They have a lot lower latency. Do you think blockchain systems like trading on DeFi actually impacts how price discovery and markets
Yeah,
interact?
yeah. So this is what we're striving for. We're far from it, like a lot closer than Ethereum, but like this is still like going to be a big pile of work. And the thing that we're building is that a state transition, like a transaction, like and what it's doing, that information should propagate through the network at the speed of light of through fiber, right? Like, you know, speed of information still has to go through fiber optic cables. We can actually propagate that state transition at that speed. So a news wire travels speed of light through fiber. Something important to markets occurs, let's say in Russia, right? That information has to propagate speed of light through fiber. When that hits a trader with a Bloomberg terminal, right? And they look at that news wire, they should actually see that price already reflected in a market running inside Solana or one at NYSE. So for all the important stuff, we can be competitive. And like the sub 1 millisecond trading, that's only trading on statistical noise, right? It's not actually trading on newsworthy stuff anymore. So while those marketplaces will exist, because there's a ton of like people do a ton of like order queue optimization and high frequency trading, like there's a big pile of like actually important trades that can occur on decentralized open networks. And as long as like we guarantee that nobody's getting ahead of you, there isn't anyone else with a 1 millisecond connection while you have a 10 millisecond connection, right? If it's truly open, censorship resistant, you know, and everyone's like kind of bound by this like speed of light through fiber half around the world, that's the limit. If we get there, then it can, I don't know, maybe it'll be 5% of finance, maybe it'll be 50, who cares, right? It's a big enough kind of pie that it's an interesting problem that it's worthwhile pursuing.
So with something like Solana though, can't traders still try and get ahead of each other in other ways, like to figure out where the most likely validators are and just be physically closer?
Yeah, so this is like, well, the physically closer part is open to anybody, right? Anybody can set up a validator, anybody can get stake, and anybody can be a block producer. And this is where you get into this like miner extracted value. Like if I have stake and I'm a block producer and I attract order flow or this like flow of trades, can I start doing high frequency trading and optimization on that thing before it gets into the network? And there isn't any solution to this except making that a fair open market and maximizing the number of these like participants that are trying to do this optimization per second as possible. So
then it
like
equalizes out.
exactly, yeah. So if we get the most block producers per second, and there's ways for us to actually have multiple concurrent block producers over the same state. Like if we make that all possible right around the world, then it's an open fair market. Anybody can get some stake, participate, start doing that HFT optimization. So yeah, NYSE should just be a node on Solana.
That's a cool way of thinking about it for sure. So yeah, and the other thing you were talking about is you're talking about solving things with physical hardware, and that's kind of interesting because I've seen a lot of blockchain systems looking at sharding, looking at rollups, looking at all these sort of more complicated software-based approaches. If why did you choose to go for hardware versus trying to push the current hardware a little bit harder?
So we are pushing current hardware as hard as we can. And the thing is that like when I joined Qualcomm, I started working on this 2 megabyte ARM, 16-bit ARM thing that was 200 megahertz. That was like the first device I started working on. 10 years later, it was an 8-core, 64-bit, multi-gigahertz, 4 gigs of RAM device. So, so right now, right,
Yeah.
like the standard for 5G is designed to guarantee 1 gigabit access between like a car in like US and a car in China to do video, like real-time video at 1 gigabit. They're both driving.
Wow.
Right. So 10 years from now, like
just
this
write
stuff is
it.
going to be just common, right? Like we're not going to like that like exponential curve is really hard to notice in the moment, but it's like breakneck over like just a decade. So software takes a lot of time to build. Like takes 10 years to build a database, takes 10 years to build an operating system. Like we kind of have the experience working at like a big tech company to like see what is how does a big organization plan for like these big changes, because they know Moore's law, right? They see like what the stuff is going to do 4 or 5 years from now, and this is how they're able to do it. So this is kind of like I guess our expertise, or like what we thought of first. And honestly, I thought everyone else was going to do the same thing. Like I was like, oh man, everyone's going to copy us. We're all going to be like in this like death march of like trying to squeeze milliseconds out of everything.
Yeah. So is that what you've leveraged that experience over at Qualcomm to kind of forecast and foresee, and like why I guess go against it in terms of, software versus, or leveraging what's available, I guess, like the tech and like and building with it in parallel, right?
Yeah. And like just sharding is really, really tough. Like it's like a massively hard problem. I don't know if you guys know who Tarun Chitra is. He made this joke that it's a lot harder to get 1,000 chickens to pull a cart than 2 horses.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. So Ethereum too, those designs are trying to get 1,000 chickens to coordinate. And that's
touch on that a little bit. Touch on that just a little bit in terms, I people in the space have probably heard it. Even PhDs and like researchers, right? Like have said that even before Ethereum launched, that Ethereum was, and not to knock on it, Ethereum's done some good things. We're just talking technical and just kind of like understanding the concepts, how it's applied, where like, these challenges were already foreseen on like, this other protocol. And what is it about, some of these challenges known, but it's still taking off and these iterations are coming out.
Yeah. So what are you building for, right? That's kind of the key thing. Like, I think Bitcoin is, people think it's not scalable. They underestimate what it takes to coordinate that much electricity into a single thing, right? It's web scale, thermodynamic security. They've solved that, right? What I think is interesting about ETH1 or like proof of work based ETH is that they might actually surpass Bitcoin because of the use cases, this like settlement of funds and big transfers. There's a lot of value to extract, like mine extractive value. There's a lot of opportunity to be a block producer that is providing security to Ethereum and take advantage of those settlement, like the arbitrage in the settlement. So if you think of like ETH1 as like the world settlement chain, it might actually surpass Bitcoin in hash power. And that's a massively scaled use case. That's awesome, right? Like, so what are we scaling here, right? Like what we're working on is this like maximal amount of information. Like Noisy does, I think, only 200 orders per second, like actual trades settled, and does 30x more orders. Like, so 200 times 30 in terms of orders actually dumped into the system, and times 30 cancels. So most of the messages that are throwing into this like information bucket is just people saying, no, that price is wrong. Right.
Oh, wow.
And this is how like you can't do that on Ethereum while solving for this massively scaled, secure proof of work chain. But you can do that on Solana. So you can think of us working on this like execution layer. Like, how do we dump all this information into a single state where we can like discover like what is the price of any one of these things? And that's a different problem, right? Like we don't really care about proof of work, global hash power security. That's just not a issue that we care about. But we do care about censorship resistance. We do care about like maximizing that group of validators that could possibly try to screw any of the participants. Because if we don't have that, then there is no market, there's no fair connection. It's not competitive with NYSE, nobody cares. Right? Let's go back to the drawing boards. Let's go back to Qualcomm.
They'll hire you back, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about like decentralization, centralization. What does the future look like in terms of like, are these just options, a hybrid approach? You know, we have people that are like, I want everything decentralized, right? I want my own X, Y, and Z, you know, my own identity. And then we have other people that are like, you know, I'd rather use, you know, this centralized system because I can have tech support and like they can fix it and I get my money back right away, whatever the case is. How do you kind of see this world with both of these options? And you know, we're kind of coming into it now, right? Of being able to develop these dApps and leverage the technology. So how do you see like decentralization versus centralization, and how does that play out?
I think you'll start seeing people trying to compete with like these centralized providers give the exact same features and benefits. In fact, like here's like a centralized thing that can give you your money back and escrow your transfer. Like you'll start seeing those teams use decentralized finance, DeFi protocols, and build everything on top of smart contracts. Because if they can do that, it's basically two people taking on Bank of America, right? Like it's two people that worked over the weekend, put up a website, and like can like handle escrowing USDC transfers in a trustless way and coordinate between like 10 people that want to do this, whatever they want to do, purchase. They can do this with just software and not a lot of software and like not a lot of work. And all of a sudden they have something that's competitive with like these big branded financial systems. And startups, you know, they're all about like this like super high leverage bets, like a couple people that just, you know, grind it out over a weekend. And then like all of a sudden they're at the right moment in time and that thing takes off.
Yeah. All right. That's kind of interesting.
Like that we're like, I don't see, you know, like Circle, I think is a startup that gets crypto and is able to build payments networks. I think it's going to be super hard for a big branded Visa, MasterCard to like switch their brain to like, but two people, literally two people like can go like hack out a credit system that uses USDC and gets yields like savings yields in dollars out of DeFi without being custodied of anyone's funds. They can literally build you a savings account that does transfers and escrow and all this other stuff. And like they're competing now with like Visa, with Bank of America, and that's just two people like in a website. It's as close to like old school Silicon Valley like garage startup like taking on the world as we can get.
It's like Galen behind his computer for 72 hours drinking Red Bulls. He sent me a picture how they get like 5 Red Bulls like stacked up over the weekend.
LaCroix for me.
No, healthier.
Definitely.
It's office simulation. I can't go to the office. I'm simulating it at home.
Yeah, and I think that's where the innovation like kind of gets extracted. Where I was trying to like figure out how I was going to question this, like, you know, Web 2.0 and 3.0, you know, the advancement of this technology. And you mentioned it here, like flipping, like understanding how it applies, not necessarily like plugging in blockchain into like old traditional models. That's kind of the transition period, but we haven't even hit that like next wave of leaving all that behind, right?
It's gonna
Like
be
people,
too late for them. By the time like their management sees it as a threat, they've already lost.
Yeah, right? No, you're right. And like you're trying to plug in this technology and like it makes sense for a period of time, whatever. There's use cases, but like the real innovation on the public side is coming. It's here in terms of like thinking way differently, you know, in terms of how we operate, how we're going to do business, what people care about, right? Like I think we've got used to this Web 2.0 of like giving our information up, and now Now we're kind of trying to take that back and operating on our own terms. And yeah, I just saw my interest on this account. Like it's, you get, I'm getting like 8, 10, 12%, like standard. I'm not even talking the DeFi, like yield farming crazy. I'm just talking about a
right? To like, I think 10 to 15% just on
yeah.
dollars.
And like, I just leave it in there. And like, I'm already, you check the bank and it's like 25, I don't even know if it's 25 bips. It's like less than that. Like, which people, that's like not 25%. That's like a quarter of a percent and less. Yeah. And yeah, no, that's kind of, it's kind of crazy. And so what about like the Solana community? Like, blockchain was siloed, and Galen can talk to this a little bit. Like talk about like the tribalism, Galen, like what you saw in the past, and let's ask like Anatoly here, like how his community is. It look like your experience, Galen, with in the past few years of just the I'm building my own thing and like not.
Oh yeah. I mean the community. I think the community is a little interesting. Everyone is either a big advocate of a particular chain, and if you go to discussions, there it's like very, very competitive. Everyone's like, oh, you should do everything on this chain, every other chain sucks. I actually think it's starting to go away a little bit. Like more people are doing interoperability, more people are just sort of starting to migrate applications into sort of whatever works. So I think it does seem a little bit less tribal now, and a little bit more just people are gravitating towards solutions that work well for them in terms of the crypto community. I don't know if you've seen something similar.
So all the layer one engineers, we all love each other. We're all working on the same hard problems. We'll share like ideas and like solutions with each other. There's kind of like free flow of information there. It's awesome. Like it's a really true open source ethos style community. It's really cool to be a part of it. The kind of like tribalism on crypto Twitter, I think is it's actually like I think an overall benefit. Like the fighting like forces you to make succinct arguments and like kind of like tests you every time, and like kind of sharpens your debate skills and argument skills, and like makes you like better. And that's important when you try to take these really complicated concepts and explain them to people coming into the space. If you had like 2 years of fighting on crypto Twitter, you've like sharpened those arguments to like a fine point.
No, you're right. It does. It makes you not take it for granted, and like, oh yeah, like let me look into that a little bit more. Let me research that. Or like, you're right. These people that do take like firm stances, like that love it. You're like, what do they see? And it does force you to kind of open your eyes a little bit and kind of compare and contrast. And like, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. It makes sense on what they're doing. You mentioned earlier, kind of like, there's going to be chains for certain use cases and niches and whatever the case is. So yeah, the Solana community, like how strong, like, Ethereum kind of got big, right? The Bitcoin community, the Ethereum community, and then there's a lot of other like chains that are people learning about. Like, how should we view the community for Solana?
Yeah, so we kind of had like, just based on how we were building this and like what we were telling, like we're going to solve this with hardware. We need you to go like call up a local co-location, figure out if they have like server space, and go install a machine. That was a filter that like basically turned off, 95% of the people, but the people that went through were like, oh, this is cool. I love like the stuff. I love networking. I love like building PCs. I love benchmarking systems and like really like getting hands down and dirty. So a lot of our validators are like folks that have like ton of experience doing this, and they weren't like scared by this. Like they know what a co-location is, right? And it's fine, right? Like, and that was like, I think kind of like the core of our builder ethos. So there's a lot of overlap between that and like, I think early Ethereum mining, like people that were like put together weird rigs of GPUs trying to minimize like the cost and like maximize hash power. We have like kind of similar people that like geek out on like, benchmarking, like what is
Yeah.
the cheapest system I can build that gets over 100,000 TPS, that kind of stuff. So
That's cool. Yeah, and you need that. Like we kind of keep pushing the boundaries, like
right.
experimenting, trying different things. Otherwise, and you need the community to kind of like try this shit out. Like like have everybody kind of tinker and mess with it to get some feedback, like pivot, learn some new shit, right? Educate everybody else too while they're at it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's I think culture building like really depends on this like niches. Like you actually have something to pull people together.
Yeah.
Not just like everything is generic, right? Like this is
Yeah.
it kind of loses its message.
Yeah, no, totally. And I know we got a couple minutes here. Like, what are your thoughts on this is an NFT themed event, so I got to bring it back. What are your thoughts on NFTs?
So like I said, like I used to play Ultima Online, and I literally like went through the trouble of driving to a bank, putting money in, getting a cashier's check to get like some gold on Ultima Online.
Yeah.
From a rando at
very
over
cumbersome,
the internet, right? Like, so there's like definitely just something interesting about like this global participation game that's crypto, that we're all like part of this weird game, and the servers, Ethereum, Solana, right? Those are different servers we're all part of, and like finding those shiny trinkets and trading them. I think that's just part of the human experience. And like I think NFTs really like dive really deep into it. And the cool thing about him is I think it really is a place for digital artists that didn't have a home prior to crypto to like really show off their works. So there's kind of like couple things coming together there. Obviously, like I think the metaverse style games like Star Atlas is a game that's building on Solana. It's like trying to be EVE Online. That's a whole different thing that we'll see a bunch of permutations, and like really cool to think about what is like the best of that. Like, are we actually going to have like Ready Player One where everything is connected and we have avatars? Maybe in 10 years, like
it's gonna happen. Like,
yeah,
all this stuff isn't far out. It's gonna be like Minority Report, where you like walk in and like it's reading your eyes and like making suggestions. You're probably gonna get airdropped, just based off of your identity through your eyes. What about like interoperability, like to open this thing up, like NFTs, you have to pick and choose where you want to build it, the network, going back to the community, the support, like, switching, between chains and like networks, like how important is that? The congestion on one aspect, the gas costs, like, some of those.
It's like, so Ethereum's in a tough spot because of the trying to guarantee, ETH2 is really trying to do this like 1,000 chickens pulling a cart thing. It's a super hard problem. And ETH1, the proof of work, it's just impossible to optimize. It's as fast as any proof of work chain can get. So every layer 2 has trade-offs. So it's kind of like no win situation there. But anything like any useful ecosystems are all going to have bridges. There's a bridge that we run by our validators called Wormhole, that's got like ERC20 style transfers. It's about to enable ERC721 transfers between two networks. So NFTs minted on one can actually go to the other one and carry that metadata forward. So that it's just like this stuff is just, that part is, I think, easy. That's just engineering, like ops and like writing some code. Optimizing ETH1 is like a really hard problem. So gas costs are probably not going to go away, and where they go away on the layer 2s, you're going to have some trade-offs, like the similar trade-offs to bridging an asset from Ethereum through the bridge to Solana. You take some honest majority assumptions from the bridge, and those are risks that people have to get used to. And I think we just need better tooling of exposing that information to users to make them comfortable to understand what they are. And once that's there, once you see like what is actually happening here, the wallets and everything else will kind of make this a lot easier. I don't know if you've been following like Phantom Wallet, which is a kind of like next generation MetaMask, building on Solana first, which is what I think is going to happen more and more often.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But they have like really nice UIs that show how bridging works, how those assets move through between like MetaMask and stuff. So we're pretty excited about when that stuff launches, including like the NFT visualization that's baked right into the wallet.
And that's important for like the next, billion people. Like these are the toolings and like, resources and things to educate and like understand, like even now I was like moving some coins and like I knew what I was doing, but I wasn't like confident. I don't know why. It was just like,
got to send a test transaction, but that's $100.
Exactly. I was like, I'm gonna send you like $1 and let's see if it makes it. No, totally. But and yeah, it was kind of interesting. So what else is building? What are you seeing actually building on Solana? And then what do you hope to kind of see be built on Solana?
We'll be releasing some really awesome tooling around like NFTs. So I want folks to just kind of jump right in and try to build that. There's a lot of finance stuff that folks are working on simply because Serum is a central limit order book. So it's the same like smart contract that runs the New York Stock Exchange, right? That's now as a smart contract on Solana. It's a new DeFi primitive that's just has a different design space. So all the things that like Uniswap v3 tries to fix, you can do that really easily and very cost like gas efficient and capital efficient using Serum. So a lot of folks are like trying a bunch of different ideas there. NFTs, like I mentioned, we have tooling coming out, and especially like updates to Wormhole that our community is working on to make sure that 721s appear like on both networks. I think there's a lot of like uncharted territory with like social tokens. Like this idea that like humans coordinating with cryptography, I think can be really disruptive to like ad-based net revenue networks, because if you just have like a joke on Reddit that's part of your community, that's the token, right? It's this meme, and the platform just charges some very small percentage, like 0.2 cents per upvote per whatever. You're kind of getting the same like ROI as a platform as you would from advertisement. It's 0.2 cents per ad view. Like if you get engaged, but you don't have to steal anyone's data, right? You don't have to like siphon anyone's information. You don't have to like push ads down people's faces. Like it just becomes like these like communities that get better and like more valuable the more engagement you get and the happier the users are. So
it democratizes a little bit of accessibility, like opportunity. Everybody kind of everybody feels valued, right? Like and that engagement, I guess, even within the community, allows for these kind of ways to earn or get noticed.
So like somebody's gonna build $1 trillion coin that's all just people sending pictures of cats to each other.
I mean, we've already had the crypto kitties that went, and that was at like day one. Those went off. So I don't haven't take issue to that because that's gonna happen. Somebody was saying everything's just going to be an NFT.
Yeah.
And then there's like some one of my other speakers was talking about like physical NFTs where it's kind of embedded like in the material and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy. No, this has been a good discussion, man. I think we kind of went over our time here. Thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Sure. We appreciate it. We hope to have you back. Do you guys do a lot of marketing? I feel like Solana's just known.
Do some.
I feel like Solana's just known. Like it's just more of like delivering and like getting the community to rally, and then that's how people know, word of mouth. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we just try to ship stuff, and then like a lot of projects pick it up.
It's all good. I have kids too, but I kicked them out.
This is my time.
We'll finish this up in like 1 minute, but I think I forgot what I was asking you. Marketing. I feel like Solana's so just deliver, right? Strong community, but not too much too much going on, and there's the future right there, the future of crypto. My daughter's 5, and I have a Bitcoin backpack, and like she knows about blockchain, Bitcoin, and everything.
Yeah.
She pretends she's in the living room on her laptop, like,
Did you get in the blockchain ABCs?
Yeah, she's like, I'm building this blockchain app. I'm like, what? She's been listening to all these interviews. It's too much, but yeah, man, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But where can people learn more about Solana, and things that
Solana.com. So go to Solana.com and like look at our docs, and there's a hackathon going on, Solana Soul Season, I think, or yeah. But it's linked in the front page, and it's got really great resources on how to get started. So if you're one of those engineers that just spends their nights trying to build something, just go try it. Like who knows?
When did that hackathon start? Like recently?
We just announced it yesterday or Wednesday.
Awesome. So, we'll push that too. I'll link up with your team, and we'll promote that through REIMAGINE and share that through our social channels and our university program, get everybody involved. But first of all, yeah, man, appreciate your time. We hope to have you back. Good stuff. I've been following you. That was my first research project 3 years ago, and like it's paying off. But
glad we got that C. C's get degrees, man.
But I said they were going to become an A. I just didn't know when. Soon, very soon. Cool, man. So appreciate that, Galen. Thanks for co-hosting with me. We look forward to bringing you back as well. And for everybody tuning in to REIMAGINE 2021, I hope you enjoyed our discussion here with Anatoly, co-founder of Solana. Check them out. Start building on them. Good stuff, good team, great community, and we'll sign off here. All right, guys. Thanks.